Hey guys, welcome to the MagFed Ranch Paintball channel, and today I'm going to be doing a versus video. But before I get into it guys, subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, share, and comment. Alright, let's get into it guys. So the versus topic of today is going to be effective range versus maximum range. Okay guys? And so before we can get into what those two, I guess, criterias, metrics, or concepts mean, we have to obviously define the goal or the target that will obviously determine those two concepts, okay guys, of effective range or maximum range, guys. And so I wanted to give you guys a target here as an example. Now obviously it's supposed to simulate a live person target, right? But in essence it's a torso size, IPSC type target, but made out of plastic instead of a paper target that you would normally see in either competition or of course just target practice, right guys? Another thing I really wanted to show you guys too was that you can see the effects of just shooting paintball, but specifically first strike rounds at our plastic targets, guys. Just over time, plastic is brittle, so just the impact of the rounds are going to weaken the plastic, and of course it's going to crack it eventually, guys. So watch out for a video where I will show you guys how to make one of these targets, but in essence it's just going to be a plastic version or a polycarbonate in essence version of an IPSC target, okay guys? The dimensions of this target, just so you guys are aware, is going to be 30 inches by 19 inches, okay guys? And that is supposed to simulate the average, torso of a male, right? Typical average height of an American male is 5'10", and in terms of the width of the shoulders, right approximately 18 to 20 inches, and then of course 30 inches for the torso. Okay, guys. Okay. So that is the target, the objective, okay guys? So when we're talking about effective range versus maximum range, it's talking about can we, right, hit this target, and at what effective range can we hit this target, and at what maximum range can we hit this target? Okay guys? And so now that we kind of set that mission or set that purpose, now we can discuss some of the criteria and some of the metrics that will differentiate the effective versus maximum range. Okay, guys? And then, of course, the markers that will most likely be used to fulfill that role. And, of course, we got to talk about everything that will obviously, give that outcome a potential better outcome, right? So we're talking about optics, we're talking about rounds. So anyways, let's get into it, guys. Let's discuss the criteria first in terms of what is going to separate effective range versus maximum range. Okay, guys. And the first one is going to be lethality. Okay. Well, in the real world, lethality has obviously a very real, pragmatic meaning, right? Meaning that can you, in essence, kill the target that you're aiming for, right? We use politically correct terms like neutralize or stopping power, but really what it means is can you kill that target, and at what effective range can you kill that target, and what maximum range can you kill that target at? Okay, guys? And so when we're talking about lethality, though, when it comes to paintball, right, we don't have to concern with obviously the stopping or neutralization killing factor, right? Because a hit is a hit in paintball. Very similar to airsoft, right? You can get hit in the hand, and that's considered elimination, right? You can get hit even obviously with paintball. You can even get hit on your marker or on your gear, and as long as the paintball breaks, that's considered an elimination, right? I don't know if that's similar in airsoft. I know they play with kind of like an honor system, right? So that if you get hit, it's like you got to call yourself out. But I don't know if that means a hit on your rifle, or if that means a hit on your gear, right? Like, for example, what if you were, you had a walkie-talkie that was sitting away from your body? If it hits that, right, would that be considered an elimination? Well, in paintball, generally, the rule is yes, that would be considered an elimination. Any break on your body is considered an elimination. And that's the reason why, if you notice, like, speedball players, right, that's the reason why they wear loose clothing, right? So that way it kind of potentially prevents a ball from breaking, so that way it kind of gives them an advantage if that's the case, right? Now, I would like to see, before I get into, further into that metric, guys, I would like to see our MagFed games, our MagFed paintball games, standardize that. And I would love to see kind of our gameplay and our sport standardized in general, right? Because I've been to some tournaments where if you don't get hit, unless you get hit on your body, it's not considered out. Meaning a marker hit doesn't count, a gear hit doesn't count, right? So I would like to see that standard, regardless if that means any hit matters or not. Okay, so the first that first one is going to be lethality, guys. Right. Number two is going to be probability of hit. Right. So there's when it comes to these concepts of effective range or maximum range, there's no clear 100%. Okay, and I'll explain a little bit here in a bit, but in essence, it's probability. It's a percentage. It's like, how probable can you hit this target at that distance, and what is the maximum range, right? And that would be considered technically the effective range, right? If the probability is high. But of course, the maximum range is that, what is the maximum range that you can actually hit the target, even if the probability is low. Okay? And now, with that criteria of probability, right, we have so many other factors that come into play, right? And this is kind of where we need to start talking about all the different, setups, marker setups, optics, barrel lengths, stability, platform, bipods, first strike rounds, the type of first strike rounds, right? So let's discuss maximum range first, because I think that is a little bit easier to quantify, right? So once again, if we're using the general paintball rule, right, of that the paintball has to break on the target, okay, the maximum range in essence would be what is the furthest distance that we could hit a man-sized target, right, and have the first strike round break on that target. Okay, and now this is going to have a lot of obviously variables in play, right? We talk about clothing already, where if someone is wearing potentially loose clothing, or maybe if the round hits the body at a certain angle and at that really far distance, right, it doesn't break because there's not enough energy behind the first strike round, that wouldn't be considered an elimination. Okay, and so like I said, there's going to be these factors of how far will the round hit the target and actually break on the target. Okay, so right now the general rule of thumb is that the maximum range of a first strike round is about 450 feet, right, or 150 yards. Okay, guys. I want to do that test, so like I said, when the weather gets a little bit nicer and I can go to a spot where there's a longer distance, right, a longer field where I can actually get to 150 yards or beyond, guys, I am going to test that for you, so watch out for those videos. But right now, the general rule is that, the kind of the consensus that 150 yards is the maximum range of a first strike round. But I'm curious, like I said, does that mean that is the the max range that the round will hit? Or can the round actually fly further than that? I know there are some kind of like, not very, I guess, scientific reports out there. Maybe some people just shooting some videos of people shooting past 450 feet. But did the round actually break? Well, who knows? I'm going to put that theory to the test. Okay, guys? So this is going to be kind of where, depending on the probability factor, how you will determine if that is the maximum range or not. Okay, because for example, is the maximum range the range at which you can hit this target 20% of the time, 80% of the time, right? Typically that would be considered more effective range if you can hit it over, more the majority of the time. But let's say if you can hit it 1 out of, 25 times, which would make it less than 10%, would that actually be considered the maximum range? So like I said, it'd be curious to see what we all agree upon would be the maximum range if one of us goes out there and hits a target and it actually breaks at, let's say, 550 feet, right? Would that actually be, 180 something yards? Would that actually be the maximum range? So, but anyways, guys, that is kind of what the definition of maximum range is, right? What is the furthest distance that we can hit this man-sized target that the round will actually break on, okay? All right, so let's get into effective range, because the effective range, I think, is a little bit less clear. There's a lot more factors involved, and this is kind of where, discussing the markers is going to have a little bit of, obviously, influence on this factor, on this criteria of effective range, right? Now, real quick, going back to maximum range, I mean, all these markers, to an extent, will have very similar maximum ranges, right, guys? I mean, even the 8-inch barrels, at the feet per second, of 300 feet per second, it's going to fly out pretty much to the same distance as a 12-inch barrel. And like I said, I'm going to test this out for you guys, so we're going to find out eventually, but my hypothesis is that it's not going to have like less distance per se because of, a shorter barrel. But we'll see, right? But right now, I have a feeling that the maximum range from the 20-inch barrel to the 10-inch barrel isn't going to be that much of a difference. But the effective range is going to be, okay, guys? Because when we're talking about effective range now, right, we're talking about the probability, and it has to be a high probability. Otherwise, we cannot really say that you're going to have a likelihood chance of hitting this target at whatever this effective range we're going to determine, okay? So, for example, with the majority of the groups that we have shot with our markers, whether it was with a 10-inch barrel all the way out to a 20-inch barrel, right? The group ranges from anywhere between, potentially 5-inch groups at 80 yards, right? All the way out to roughly 15 inches at 80 yards, right, guys? So a 15-inch group at 80 yards is not bad because, once again, that fits within the dimensions of a 19 by 30-inch target, right? The probability of hitting that target is going to be fairly high because the group size is within that grouping. But when we stretch it out to, let's say, 100 yards or beyond, there's a chance that those groups can open up past that 19-inch width dimension, right? And potentially, with, I guess, not match grade first strike rounds, it could potentially open up to more than 30 inches, right? And so this is kind of where the effective range becomes, like, obviously, kind of a variable, because this is where the different barrel lengths, the optics that you use, the stability of your platform, and then, of course, the match grade ammo, right, or ammo in general, and then, of course, just you as the shooter yourself, right, is going to come into play. But for the sake of this discussion, let's take us as a shooter out of this equation. Let's just assume that all these markers are going to be shot with the setup that they're going to do, and we assume that the trigger pull is going to be consistent, that the marker is not going to be shaking when the person pulls the trigger, right? And so what we found in our testing is that the longer barrels, 20 inches, 18 inches, like our MR12 Mod O marker here, right? It's going to have reduced groupings at the further distance compared to a 10-inch or even a 12-inch barrel, right? Even per se like a 14-inch GPM marker build, okay guys? And that group size gets shrunken down even further when we start using the designated marksman marker rounds, right? Our DMM rounds, and especially if we start getting into the sniper rounds as well. Now, with our general purpose rounds, we have seen good results, but once again, it's just about the average, right? It's just about the probability, right? We've seen, once again, 2 to 3 inch group reductions from going from one round to another round used with the different length barrels. So with like the 16-inch barrel, like we have here on our SDMR, up to the 20-inch barrels, we have seen, reduced groupings when using our general purpose Mark 1 rounds versus our DMM or our sniper rounds. These rounds get a little bit tighter groupings with the longer inch barrels. And then, like I said as well too, the longer inch barrels get a little bit slightly tighter groups as well. Now, we also have to talk about consistency of the marker. We, like I've discussed this in length in other videos, guys, right? But we know that from testing that the T15 is not as consistent as the M17 markers. And so that plus or minus fluctuation in feet per second can cause a elevation change, right, in the grouping. So, with the T15, if you have that fluctuation, you might have less probability to hit this target at the further distances, because it might either be too low. Typically it's going to be too low, right, because the feet per second won't be as high as your first shot, and then of course it's just going to open up that group, and then therefore you might not hit it. So the effective range with a more consistent marker is going to be more ideal, okay? And then of course we need to talk about optics. Okay, but real quick, before I get into optics though, I want to make a point real quick about the rounds. All right, I know there's a lot of you guys out there that obviously maybe think you don't believe me. Obviously I haven't done the videos to show you guys yet, right? But I'm, like I said, when the weather gets better, I'm gonna shoot more videos for you guys. But there's a lot of you guys out there that doesn't believe that the rounds, obviously making sure that they're consistent and everything like that is gonna make a huge difference. Or if you do believe it, you really don't know what that difference is. But if you look at, for example, Karmatech, they have a video out there of their SAR-12 marker, right? And they were just using a comparison. They were using, that video was about a comparison of their barrel. It was their original Hammerhead 20-inch barrel versus their new 20-inch Nemesis barrel. And obviously in that testing, the Nemesis barrel got tighter groupings. So obviously barrels do make a huge part of it, right? It does make a huge influence. But if you notice in that testing, they didn't really state it much, but you'll notice that when you watch that video, it'll say something about them using weighted FSR or weighed FSR. And so that's what they did. They weighed the rounds to make it more consistent, more match grade. Now, what specifications, what parameters did they use? Obviously, that is a trade secret, just like our rounds, right? We have our trade secrets as far as what our match grade rounds specs are, right? But yeah, so weighted rounds, match grade rounds are going to make a difference, guys. It's going to make it more consistent. And then, of course, the barrel length, the barrel type, right? We specifically use Hammerhead barrels on our markers, but there's Lapco, there's Nemesis, so it would be really good to kind of make all these comparisons in the future. Now, getting into optics, right? Optics are going to obviously increase that probability, right? That word is going to continue to be used because the probability to hit the target at those further distances is what is going to determine the effective range of the round and the markers, right? And so with the crossbow scopes that are variable speed, right, because we have a decent magnification, whether that's, you know, the 2.5 magnification with the Hawk scopes, or the 2x magnifications with like the TrueGlow or the Lumix speed rings, you're getting a little bit better visibility to acquire that target at the further distance. And then of course, you also have the reticle holds at those further distances, which will able to obviously give you not only a clearer picture, but obviously now something of reference, right? A better hold than just a red dot at those further distances, right, guys? And so an optic is definitely going to come into play as well. Okay, so having the right optic is going to increase that effective range of probability of hitting this target. And then we also talked about trigger pull, guys, on other videos, right? Where, you know, like I said, the T15 to me has a slight edge in the trigger pull. It's you know, it's not a light trigger pull. It's pretty much a standard mil spec AR trigger pull, around 7 or 8 pounds. But at least it's very easy to gauge. Whereas the M17 trigger pull is pretty like heavy, and then it just breaks. So there's really no, like I said, unless you get really good at it, and unless you really kind of just stabilize the marker, the M17's trigger pull is just not as easy to keep consistent. Okay, guys? And so there's going to be some pros and cons with the different markers, right? But like I said, all these factors, barrel lengths, optics, type of rounds that you use, the air system, right? Whether it's a more consistent air system or another, that's all going to dictate the effective range of the marker. Okay? My hypothesis right now, guys, is that the effective range of our MagFed markers, using the correct setups and everything like that, is probably going to be 120 to maybe 130 yards. And what I mean by that is that you should have a probability of 80% or higher hitting this target. The military actually, you know, tries to be pretty strict. They say that you need to have like a 90% probability of hitting the target to make it an effective range, right? They state it as target area specific versus, you know, area target specific, right? Meaning that, you know, can you actually hit a man-sized target at that range versus just kind of hitting a group of men at that target, right? So if you can hit, you know, a minute a man in essence, right? If you can hit minute a man at that distance at a very high probability, then that's going to be the effective range. Okay, guys? And so, real quick, there was a question in my videos, one of my videos, where someone asked, you know, if a DMR setup can hit out to 100 yards, then what is going to be the potential range for a sniper marker, right? Well, like I said, it depends. If we're talking about effective range, I think they're both going to be very close. The sniper, of course, might have a little bit of edge because the groupings are going to be a little bit smaller, so it might extend that distance out a little bit further. But when we're talking about maximum range, I don't think there might not be a very huge difference when we talk about the different setups, because I think the maximum range, they're both going to be able to fire this FSR round because the velocity is the same, the rounds are the same in essence, that the maximum range isn't going to be too different between the two markers. Okay, guys, well, hopefully, like I said, hopefully I kind of just, you know, explained the differences between effective range and maximum range a little bit for you guys. Hopefully I answered that question on that video as far as the DMM's range versus the sniper range. Guys, if you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, smash that like button. Check you guys next time. Peace.